Hey guys, Marsing here, bringing you another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video. And so obviously thanks to the Heroes live stream, the little bits of information that we've received so far, we do know, confirmed, that the 4 units on screen right now are getting awakenings with the Heroes celebration, which should hopefully start within the next 2 weeks. I'm going to do a video discussing the timeline probably in the next few days, because the release date has been a little bit different over the last couple of years. So keep an eye out for that if you are also excited for the Heroes celebration like I am. But yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about these 4 units and just basically go over some ideas that I have for their awakenings to make them obviously as good as possible. Now, of course, you know, these are going to vary. I haven't gone into full detail of things like, you know, their exact stats and all that kind of stuff. Just basically a rough idea of what I would like to see from their awakenings in order to make them good. Now, obviously, it's kind of a meme in the community, I guess, when people do concepts for units like awakenings or easy A's, that it's very tempting to just throw like infinitely stacking attack and defense onto everybody, or like, you know, guard and damage reduction and stuff like that. So obviously I'm going to try not to do that, but we're mainly just going to try and go over the units, what they do already, and then try and think about working off the basis of their kit as it exists in their SSR form. What are they going to do once they actually get an awakening? And then it'll be interesting to see how that pans out once the units are actually in game. So we'll go ahead and start off here with BARDOCK, mainly because, you know, BARDOCK are all the rage on JP at the moment. I know JP players looking forward to him getting his awakening, because obviously he will be on the new Tech BARDOCK's 200% team. And definitely could be very interesting on there with all the awakening, the easy A's that we've just gotten for the other, like, Super Saiyan 1, 2, and 3 BARDOCKs, because this guy is very much tied to crossover. So his leader skill is crossover 3 key and 120. I don't know what they're going to be giving like Heroes TURs as a leader skill now. I would imagine 150 is not like too high. I mean, obviously for the current meta it's quite low, so I wouldn't be, I mean, if it was up to me I would just make it 170, but probably going to be like 150, which is fine. You're probably not going to use him as a leader really anyway. He does immense damage to the enemy and seals super attacks, and then he gets 140% attack and defense, additional 40% attack and defense when there are another 4 or more crossover allies on the team, attacks effective against all types when HP is 80% or more, and performs a critical hit when HP is 90% or more. So he has an interesting kit, but one of the things to bear in mind is if you start the turn on like 79% HP, then he doesn't really have any like kit at all apart from some basic stats. And I wanted to talk about Gohan as well, because these 2 units are kind of counterparts to each other, so I think their design of their awakenings should be as well, and I'll obviously go into the details of that here. So he's a giant 8 power lead, again, could probably see that jump up to 150, does immense damage to the enemy, massively lowers defense. So obviously one thing to note, neither of them have super attack effects when it comes to like their own stats. Attack and defense 140 as well. Reduces damage received by 40% when there are another 4 or more giant 8 power allies on the team. High chance to stun the attacked enemy when performing a super attack. So because it's from the passive, it means it's only for that current turn, and then it wears off on the next turn. But still very useful for things like Super Battle Road. Some of the red zone stages we have where you can stun in the first phase, like Broly and Omega, can still be very useful. So yeah, Gohan. Now, the biggest problem between these 2 units, which I think we'll talk about first before we cover the details of their awakening and how, as I already said, I kind of want them to be counterparts to each other. The biggest issue with these 2 units is this restriction part of their passive, another 4 or more allies. So because of the wording, another 4 or more means not including them. So when you're building a team, you pick your leader, you pick this guy, and then you have to pick 4 crossover units if the leader is not a crossover unit. So if we're using the Tech BARDOCK on JP as an example, who isn't in crossover, even though I think he should be, because he's from the TV special, and the AGL BARDOCK that's from a different TV special, his own crossover, but either way, here you go. So Team Tech Bardock as the leader, this guy on the team, and then the other 4 units on the team have to be crossover allies, or he doesn't get that full buff. So this absolutely has to change, because like if you wanted to run this guy on a Goku family team, for example, then again you're like heavily restricted to who you can bring on the team because they have to be also crossover allies. And then same goes for this Gohan. Whilst obviously one of the best and probably most fun ways to use him is on like a full Super Saiyan 4 team, especially because these guys do have Saiyan Raw, 4 or more Giant 8 power allies. So again, for a Goku family team or like a hybrid Saiyan team, very difficult to fit him in to those categories. So the thing that I would like to see is they either need to drop this number all the way down to 2, which then I think is much more reasonable, or they could drop the number down to 3 and then also add a secondary category on there as well. So obviously like Goku family, hybrid Saiyans, or like this guy could have Goku family, power beyond Super Saiyan, because for example they gave the Super Saiyan 3 Bardock the ability to get a guaranteed additional super attack if there's a power beyond Super Saiyan unit on rotation with him. So they're kind of already, you know, there's already a little bit of correlation there between Bardock and, you know, power beyond Super Saiyan in the passive. So that would obviously be really good, because then this guy, again, without the rest of them having to be crossover, would function well on a full Super Saiyan 4 team, because they are obviously all in power beyond Super Saiyan. You could do the same for Gohan. I mean, power beyond Super Saiyan could literally be added for both. It's just the fact that he has Giant 8 power already, which obviously does cover all of the other Super Saiyan 4s. Or you could just throw in crossover, right? Give them both crossover or Giant 8 power, because this guy, you can't run him on a Heroes team that is full Heroes units unless you're running the other heroes like Super Saiyan 4s. Now, obviously, you can run them without it, but, I mean, this guy relies on the damage reduction. Like, that's why you run him on the team, right? You'd run him to be a tank. And then this guy gets extra attack and defense, which obviously you want him to be as statted up as possible. So when it comes to how to build their kits, especially, like I say, to keep them counterparts to each other, it's very obvious that Bardock is the offense unit, right? Gets effective against all types, can get guaranteed crits, and then Gohan is the defensive unit because he has damage reduction. So obviously we want to increase their stats, attack and defense, at least, because they're going to have TUR stats as well, but at least 150, and then we would want the additional to be like another 50 at least. But when it comes to their super attack effects, I think what would be interesting for them to shore up their weakness, because Bardock is the offensive unit, so we would like him to get a little bit of help defensively, and Gohan is the defensive unit, so we would like him to get a little bit of help offensively. I think what would be really good for them is, if we take Gohan as the example, he should greatly raise defense for 1 turn on super attack, but then infinitely stack attack. And it could just be the normal raises attack. So it would be greatly raises defense for 1 turn and raises attack, and does immense damage to the enemy. I mean, he'll still massively lower defense. Because then, obviously, if he's, especially when he super attacks first, he is going to be very good defensively, right? Greatly raising his defense. He's got higher stats. This damage reduction could easily go up to 50, or hey, because it's a Gohan, make it 58%. That would be pretty good. And then as the event goes on, he's going to be stacking up his attack so he can actually do some reasonable damage. And then on the flip side for Bardock, he's greatly raising his attack for 1 turn. So then when you combine like effective against all types and the potential for crits, he's doing a lot of damage straight from turn 1. But as the event goes on, he's slowly but surely infinitely stacking his defense. So I think that would be very, very good. Now for him specifically, I think they should lower these HP restrictions a little bit as well. I do think it's weird that they gave him effective against all types and crit. Because obviously even if you're not getting the guaranteed crit, but you are getting the effective against all types, that's still obviously very good. So maybe lower those a little bit, and then yeah, I think these two could be very, very good. But this is the main thing that they have to change. Like the 4 or more allies thing is just not good enough. But very much looking forward to seeing how they look. The TUR arts are very cool. Be interesting to see how they update the super attacks. I've actually always quite liked Gohan's one, but obviously Bardock's is a little bit basic. So I wanted to focus on these two, but then I want to talk about these guys a little bit. So these two are interesting because Rebel, she's got start of turn stats, then she gets extra stats when attacking, Now then she gets a huge attack buff when the enemy is sealed. So units like this obviously immediately lose some value in some of these events where you can't seal the enemy. But it is only giving her an attack buff. So it's not like she's relying on it for her defense. So if they gave her decent enough defensive stats, I think she could still be okay. She does raise attack and defense for 1 turn on super attack already, which is good. And she seals herself. So obviously if you get an additional with her and you can seal, she's then getting this extra attack buff. She creates rainbow orbs, which can obviously be useful for some of the teams that she's on. She has a built-in 50% chance to dodge, so that already is obviously very good. And then she has a high chance of seeing the enemy super attack when there is another Dragon Ball Heroes ally attacking in the same turn. So we've talked about this in the past with units like Ginyu and stuff. A chance to have a scouter effect is completely pointless. Unless there's a way in-game, kind of like Guard, which there still isn't, of them showing you that their passive actually activated or not. Because a Scouter effect is obviously very powerful. It shows you where the enemy's going to super. It can completely change how you play out your turn. But when you have a chance to see the enemy super attack, when the rotation loads in and you see no super attack icons at the bottom, you have no way of knowing whether the passive went off and the enemy is not supering you, or the passive didn't go off, and so you don't know where the super attack is. So, honestly, chance to see enemy supers is completely worthless, because you basically just have to play as if you don't know, because you don't know whether the passive went off. So, you have to play as if you still have no idea whether there's a super coming on the turn, which is a little bit annoying. So, I mean, I can see why she has it only as an SSR, but when she awakens into the TUR, this should just be a guaranteed Scouter effect, because it already has a restriction of sorts, where she has to have a Dragon Ball Heroes ally in the same turn. So, you know, we're getting units like Chilai as a side banner unit who's now available in every banner, as opposed to this unit who only comes around once a year. Chilai has a higher dodge chance than her and has a guaranteed Scouter. So this should just be guaranteed Scouter effect when there's a Dragon Ball Heroes ally on the rotation. The orb changing is good. I mean, hey, using Chilai as an example, they could increase her dodge chance to great chance as well, which would be pretty good. Because then, if they beef up these stats a little bit, and the fact that she's also raising attack and defense for 1 turn, she could be one of those units that even if she doesn't dodge, she's still not taking a ton of damage, apart from like the hardest bosses. So I think the blueprint is already there for her to have a really, really good awakening, as long as they just increase everything that she does like a little bit, and obviously fix this chance to have a Scouter effect, because it's just a complete waste of time. And then finally we have the Corrupted Supreme Kai of Time. I'm quite surprised they didn't awaken her into the adult version, because there is an adult version, like the tech one that we have, but in the corrupted, like red colour scheme. Maybe they'll just save that for a future card, I guess. Now, the interesting thing about this unit is I'm really not sure what they're going to do with her awakening that will make her relevant in events outside of Super Battle Road, because this unit pretty much relies on being able to put debuffs on the enemy, and any enemies that are immune to status effects, she's going to be way weaker. So she has a rare chance to stun all enemies, which is like the Jiren thing, right? Start of turn, she can potentially stun everybody. It's only a 10% chance. It's a pretty OP ability, but I would still like that to go up a little bit. Even if it only went up to like 15%, it'd be much better if that was increased a little bit. She gets 90% attack and defense, which, you know, by itself is not a huge amount. But she gets an additional attack and defense 90% when performing a super. Then she gets an additional 90% when the enemy is in attack down. Additional 90% when the enemy is in defense down. Additional 90% when they're sealed. And an additional 90% when they're stunned. Which means she gets an extra 360% attack if the enemy has all 4 of those stat debuffs. And she lowers attack and defense on her super attack. So if she gets an additional, you've already applied 2 of those status effects. If her passive went off, like it is Super Battle Road, and stunned everybody, then the enemy's also stunned. So when she's fully built up, like, well, I say built up, but when the enemy she's attacking has all of those status effects, even as an SSR, she's actually got pretty good attack. Her defense is obviously not crazy. Post-super, she does have the 100% defense raise, though, which is very good. So the thing I wonder about this unit is, how are they going to make her good against enemies that you cannot put status effects onto? And I don't know how they do that without making her also busted against enemies that you can. Because they can't really remove any of these things, right? They always just accentuate them with an awakening. So even if they kept all of those buffs to 90% for the status effects, but then they bumped up her attack and defense at start of turn and when performing a super to a much higher number, that means when you take her into events where you can stun, seal, attack and defense lower, then she's going to be absolutely insane. But on the flip side, I don't really think that's a bad thing, right? Because there's not that many events where you can do that. So does it really matter? Is it really going to break the game if she's like the absolute most busted #1 Super Battle Road unit, but then in like the red zone and stuff, she's only like good? I don't think it would. So be interesting to see what they do. She is really going to be, out of the 4, the one that needs a very interesting awakening to make her good outside of Super Battle Road. So there you go. Those are my thoughts about the 4 units that we know are going to be getting an awakening this year. Let me know your thoughts down below. What would you like to see from their awakenings? Again, the art for the awakenings is pretty good. Super Saiyan 4s always go hard. I love this form. You guys know, even though I'm not a huge fan of GT, I do love the Super Saiyan 4 form. So very much looking forward to this. And let me know what you guys think down below. What would you do to these characters for their awakenings to make them good? Let me know your thoughts and concepts in the comment section down below. And let me know which one you are most looking forward to. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out the links down below for the Discord and the merch store. And I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.